Okay, hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. It is January 2nd, 2025, and this is a daily brief. There are 1,370 Russians off the battlefield, 4 tanks, 13 armored fighting vehicles, 20 artillery systems, 54 vehicles and fuel tanks. Every so often, somebody will say something in the comments like, well, where do these figures come from? Or how do you know these figures are accurate? Or why do you only show the one side? Okay, let's talk about the accuracy of these figures. So I show what Ukraine is putting out, and then periodically I check it against here's what the British are saying the estimates are, here's what the Americans are saying the estimations are, and it's not too far off as far as their estimates of the Russian casualties. Now, on the other side, the Russian figures are a lot trickier because the Russian Ministry of Defense lies all the time about how they have 5 times as many Ukrainian casualties as Russian casualties, which is just it's so improbable as to be farcical. So it's very hard to determine accurate figures from the other side. But I do periodically try to do this. So somebody was saying this yesterday. I said, look at the week of Thanksgiving, and I was showing the different casualty estimates. I did 3 or 4 times the week of Thanksgiving. So, okay, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm as balanced as possible given what we have to work with, and it's trying to discern what is true and what is not. That's half the trick. Okay, so here we see 48,670 for losses for the month of December. So that's a pretty high figure. That's the highest of the war. 65 killed and wounded occupiers every hour. So that's more than 1 per minute in December. Russian personnel losses exceed 48,000. That's wow. Okay, here's Andrew Perpetua's list from just the 31st. He's still trying to play catch up a little bit here, but look at the losses, Ukrainian losses to Russian losses. It's not a lot, but the proportion is significant. Okay. Ukrainian military intelligence confirmed now, we were talking about this, we were speculating about it the other day. Like, we know that the drone hit a Russian helicopter and destroyed one, and one was wounded and went back to, well, apparently both were destroyed, essentially. Now, the Ukrainian military intelligence confirmed now the downing of the 2 Russian helicopters from the Black Sea drone. That's just a seaborne drone that knocked down 2 helicopters. This is a big turning point in modern warfare. It's shifting significantly even as we watch. Now let's talk about Shahed drones. Ukraine's Air Force reports that a drone attack overnight, 72 Shahed drones, 47 were shot down, 24 were suppressed by electronic warfare. 1 drone remained in the air for about an hour. Now, yesterday there was 101 or so drones. And so I think I was right, and then I was wrong, and then I was kind of right and kind of, okay, so here's what happened. So I was saying about 4 days ago, I was saying, okay, there's only 6 or there's only 12 or whatever it was. The numbers a couple days in a row was very low, and I was saying, oh, this looks like Russia might be saving up for a rainy day. And then there was other evidence that seemed to indicate that no, Russian capacity to project these drones has been limited by the strikes on these drone warehouses or wherever they're being built or whatever that was, whatever the strikes were. I think both might be true simultaneously. I think that's the working thing now. Is they had 101, they built up for it, and now their capacity is still somewhat reduced, but they were saving up, but their capacity is reduced simultaneously. I think that's probably the fairest, most accurate way of looking at this. Okay, Russia continues its T campaign against Ukrainian civilians. Occupiers' artillery strike hit a city bus in Kherson this morning. At least 5 people were injured. That's just artillery, normal plain artillery. They're hitting buses in the city of Kherson. At least 5 people were injured. This is at least the 2nd time that a public transport was targeted in Kherson in recent months. Now, as a follow-up to yesterday's New Year's attack, it killed a husband and wife scientist in their bed along with their cat. On the morning of 1 January, a Russian drone attack on Kyiv claimed the lives of prominent Ukrainian neurobiologist Igor Zima and his wife, who is also a scientist and doctor of biological sciences. For many years, they both worked at the Institute of Biology and Medicine in Kyiv, and that's what the Russians were busy doing on New Year's Day. ATESH partisan movement conducted a successful sabotage operation on a railway near a missile depot in Russia's Tver region. This section of railway is used to supply the 23rd and 104th arsenals of the Russian Ministry of Defense main missile and artillery directorates. Now, this kind of thing keeps happening in Russia. Partisans are attacking these critical junctures, and I think it'll just keep going on. Meanwhile, in Ivanovsky, Kursk region, a missile strike on the Russian base is reported. I don't know anything more than that. We'll find out more, I'm sure, tomorrow. More than 38,000 Russian soldiers have been eliminated in Russia's Kursk region, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces Sersky says. Now, they're fighting a defensive line, and they've tried to draw Russians to them to fight there in Kursk. Now, I was also just looking at a Russian report that said, no, the Ukrainians have lost even more than that. It seems improbable to me. It's possible, but it seems improbable that fighting defensively, they're going to lose more than that, assuming that they have adequate supply and that sort of thing. Okay, Michael McFall says, I'm amazed that Putin has still been unable to restore Russian sovereignty in Kursk. Like, you'd think this would be priority number one, and while there are lots of Russian forces there, they have had only limited success. Now, I saw this chart. It's a chart of Russian territorial gains, and you can see just the direction of the Russian territorial gains over the course of 2024. Very limited in January, February a little bit, March, April, not so much, but once you get to about May, it got pretty significant. And then June and July, it died down a little bit. And then September, October, November, and the height was into November into December. Like every two of these is 1 month. So it looks like it might have been peaking in late November, early December, and it's starting to come back down. We won't know for another few months. Russian forces have attempted to encircle Pokrovsk instead of a direct assault. No urban combat has erupted within Pokrovsk, but Russian forces are intensifying operations in the surrounding area. So I'm not sure if they're going for the border of Donetsk and then swinging around, or if they're just going to try to take Pokrovsk, or exactly what they're doing. But I do know that the Ukrainians are dug in pretty well. This footage shows Ukrainian trenches on the Pokrovsk axis built just in 1 month. So they're getting themselves prepared as possible in Pokrovsk. Okay, so there was a Ukrainian journalist, Yuri Butasov, who wrote a detailed post about issues with the new 155th Mechanized Brigade. He reported that more than 1,700 soldiers went AWOL before deployment to the front line, including over 50 during training in France. Among the challenges, over 2,500 soldiers were reassigned to other units as combat replacements during the brigade's formation and deployed to the front insufficient equipment. So the reality is that Ukraine lacked the personnel and equipment for a new brigade and attempted to use the formation of a new unit as propaganda. Some news labeled it as one of the most heavily armed Ukrainian brigades, and yet it was missing crucial equipment. The brigade was essentially cannibalized after deployment. The brigade suffered heavy losses, resulting in further desertions. Now let's talk about this idea of desertions and AWOL. Let's deal first with the reality. It does happen. So let's not fool or delude ourselves into thinking that this doesn't happen in Ukraine. It does. It happens in every army. It's terrible, but it's happening. So we need to address the reality there. Now, it's happening in Russia as well. When it comes to desertions and AWOL, Ukraine is not the only side facing these issues. For example, according to a leaked document, Russia's southern military district alone has recorded over 19,200 cases of AWOLs, and that's just in a single district. So it's happening on both sides. While it might not be a war of attrition in the technical sense, really, to some degree, this is a war of attrition. So the manpower need is great. Here's the former commander of Ukraine's air assault forces saying everyone aged 18 to 70 who can hold a weapon should join the armed forces. We must mobilize to form infantry units that will dig in and hold back the enemy. It's pretty dire. But the Russians are coming up with great inventions like this, a modified Russian assault motorcycle with a bathtub welded to the side. Destroyed somewhere on the front line. The video was filmed by the Russians. Okay. Jake Pro posted this, the modern version of an old Soviet joke. The president is an idiot. You can't criticize Putin. Wait, I meant President Zelensky. You can't fool us. Everyone knows who the idiot is. Two more things and we'll be done. Weeks 149. Victories, 0. Well, not technically true. They have taken some certain places like Bakhmut and things along those lines, but casualties, 780,000. Ruble up to 113. Actually, right now it's at 111.5, but who's counting? Interest rate, way up. Economy, in a toilet. War crimes, infinite. Kursk, partly Russian. Ukrainian Air Force is flying. Azerbaijan airliner, not flying. Syria, lost. Oil refineries, exploding. NATO, much larger. Red lines crossed. I remain master strategist. Now, strategy is important, and this kid understands this. I saw this post that said, my son stayed home on New Year's Eve so he could spend time with his big sister. That was awfully nice of him, wasn't it? All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.